MacVoicesTV is brought to you by PDF Pen for iPad from Smile, the mobile version of the award-winning Mac PDF editor. Use it to sign a contract, make corrections, fill out an application, make comments on a presentation, and much more. It's the mobile app that doesn't feel like you left the important features back at the office. Welcome to Mac Notables. This is the home of the Mac experts you want to hear from. I'm Chuck Joyner, and we are going to dive deep in the lair of Bob, Dr. Mac LeVitus this time. Bob, it's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for letting me do this from my comfortable chair in my office. This works great.
I love this. Is a new angle to your office. We've seen different angles before. This time we get a little bit different, and man, there's a lot of stuff in there.
My wife walks in and I go, you shouldn't probably move around in here. It's a danger zone. Every shelf is packed to overflowing. In fact, I was just thinking it's about time to have another garage sale. Every shelf should be I should go through and get rid of stuff. If I haven't used it in 5 years, then I should get rid of it. And I've got a lot of stuff that meets that criteria. So I'm speaking at the Austin user group, Cat Mac, next month, I think. And so I think I plan my garage sale for like the weekend after that. It's always a good idea. Where else am I going to find a couple hundred Mac people to invite to a garage sale that's going to have lots of cables and, outdated equipment? Well, who wants that stuff? Only people that go to user group meetings.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've done a few of those myself.
They'll be camped out. Last time I did this, I said doors open at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, and at 8 o'clock there were people in my driveway.
Well, but they know the stuff that you get, the volume and the quality. So
image writers, baby.
Yeah. Boy, there's a word we haven't uttered for a while.
Serial printers. I'm telling you, the last sale I had, I donated the money to the animal shelter, but because I felt bad because most of the stuff was review stuff, but it was really old. I mean, it was like there were cables people would walk up and go, "What is this?" I don't even remember. It's some kind of old video cable, I think, but it could have been a serial cable for networking a long, long time ago before Apple Talk. Buy it for $1. It's yours. You can take it home and cut it open.
Sure. That's I know. I've bought plenty of stuff that I took home and dissected just to figure out how it worked.
No, and they're having at the Cat Mac meeting this month, which is tomorrow night, they're having an auction. They got some MacBook Pros donated, and they're 20 MacBook Pros. And so there's a user group meeting and then a silent auction. And I absolutely wanted to go there and pick one up. My wife needs a computer. My kids probably both need computers. If there were deals, I would have gone and bid. But I'm teaching tomorrow night. I'm teaching a class called Digital Photography for Mac Users, and it's just a kick. It's great. These are people who have been taking pictures and have Macs and haven't really figured out the whole iPhoto and how to put together a gallery and how to show it to your friends on your iDevice. And so it's really fun. It's only 12 hours. So Tuesday and Thursday night, I've got class.
And where is that?
It's at University of Texas.
Okay, so you're now a college professor, or have been for a while.
Yes. I did this, probably 5 years ago. They had a pretty big program that got shut down due to budget. And then it made a comeback 2 years ago, and they called me up and said, "We're calling all our old instructors. Do you want to teach your classes again? Do you want to teach anything new?" So I teach Intro to Mac, Intro to iPad, Intro to iPhone, Intro to Winning at Texas Hold'em, and Digital Photography for Mac people. Oh, yeah, and So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star, recording audio with GarageBand.
Oh, so you have a complete curriculum there.
If you live in Austin, you should go to informalclasses.org and look them up because they're really inexpensive. They're like mostly under $100 for either 9 or 12 hours of instruction. With me.
That's spectacular.
And it's not like a video link up. I actually come to class every week, office hours and the whole thing.
And you give homework?
I do. It's really easy, though. It's like the homework is always the same. What do you want to learn next week? And they have to send me email. So they have to prove their email prowess by sending the homework via email. I don't grade it, but it is good for me to hear because the classes are small. The classes, like my photo class, is only 7 people. And so it's possible for me to tailor what I teach to what they want to learn. You know, it's like I have an outline of all the things I think they should know, but there's some wiggle room in there, and there's some stuff that I could probably skip to teach them the things they asked to learn. So it works out really well, and I haven't had any classes that were too big for me to at least consider every request and usually accommodate them.
Oh, that's great.
I love teaching. It's really as a columnist and a reviewer, it's really a good reality check for me. It's like having Macworld every week because, you know, ordinarily I don't get that much chance to hang out with a room full of people using technology and be in a position where I can say, what part of that didn't you understand, so that I get a feel for it. Like when I teach my Intro to Mac class, it's great for my Mac OS X book. Because I watch people and I say, okay, so, you know, I see where they're running into their troubles, and maybe I should approach how do I explain that a different way, because obviously this is confusing to them, like saving files. And I don't think Mountain Lion and Lion have made it easier. It's harder for me now, I think, to teach them about saving files. And bringing the cloud into the equation makes it even more complicated. So it's really good that we have the basic classes. I think people like that focused, concentrated, like, you know, I'm going to get you from being a rookie to being comfortable using your Mac in 9 hours. I think people like that. So that class, we offer that, I think, every other month or every 6 weeks or something. It's pretty often. It's going to, classes are going to end for the year pretty soon, and then they pick up in January, and I've got all the same classes next semester.
Very nice.
So if you live in Austin, look me up.
No question.
University of Texas informal classes. They're very informal. I come in shorts and sandals, a Hawaiian shirt. Well, the title's informal classes. I figure that means they want me to dress informally.
So no tuxes, no ties.
No, I never dress formal for school.
Okay.
In fact, I never dress formal for anything except my cousin's wedding a couple months ago. Other than that, you couldn't get me in a monkey suit. Mike Rosenfeld once tried. He had some scheme where he wanted me to wear a monkey suit. I don't even do ties, much less bow ties.
Yeah, that's just not your style.
Not my style
Not your
at
style.
all. That's why I went into this line of work. And why I moved to Austin, Texas, where I don't know of a place that requires a jacket or a tie. There might be one, but it's not a kind of place I'd hang out at.
Bob, let's talk about the a little bit down the road as far as the future, and then we'll get into some products and all. But Macworld 2013, Macworld iWorld 2013, you're going to be there. The Cirque du Mac is happening, and you're going to be on stage again?
It's just like Macworld again. Yeah, no, it's yes, I think I'm actually really looking forward to it. I liked it last year, even though it's become a different kind of show than when Apple was coming and there were big product announcements and stuff. It's the scale, I think, is much more human. And I think for me, I get much better opportunities here to find products that I never heard of before that are cool. Whereas the old Macworld, 2/3 of the exhibits were stuff I already owned. You know, big companies that are very, you know, all the bread and butter stuff, the printers and the same retailers. There was just a sameness about it when it was all an Adobe and Microsoft and all the big companies taking up big floor space. And now that that's over, now that Apple pulled out and a lot of the bigger vendors did, now I think the scale of the whole event has changed to the point where the smaller developer believes they can get a fair shake. They can get some attention in this. In the old days, it was hard for somebody in a small booth to get any kind of traction at Macworld. Even though we all the writers I know say, my favorite part of Macworld is Shantytown, way in the back corner where those guys you never heard of are in 10 by 10 booths, sometimes 4 to a booth. That's where you find the cool stuff. And now there's a lot more of those guys because they're not competing as much for floor space with the big players, who I never spent any time with anyway, but it made it harder to get to, to sift through and find the cool new stuff. So I think last year I probably discovered, that's kind of my word for it, but discovered more products at Macworld last year and the year before, I think, than in years before that. It used to be, I'd find a couple things and I'd be really happy that I discovered a handful of things. And last year I came home with like 5 pages of notes of things that I thought were cool that I wanted to review. And that hadn't been happening before that. And also I think the programming has been much more fun. Like I got to see a bunch of guys playing guitar this year, which I thought was a very cool kind of, sideshow to Macworld. They were all doing stuff on Macs, and they were all using either Macs or iDevices in their music making. But it was very cool to, go out and see these guys as kind of a lunchtime featured attraction. You could go see these guys playing guitar and teaching you recording tricks and stuff. I didn't know Sal Segoyan was such a good guitarist.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm with you. You think of Al as Sal as the AppleScript guy, and there he is with a guitar.
I guess it's like he's a savant. It's like he can write any kind of intricate code stuff, including music, because he was amazing. I was very, very impressed.
Yeah.
Wonder if he'd come and sit in with us at the Cirque du Mac.
Never know if you don't ask.
I will ask.
Yeah, I agree with you. The show has evolved. People talk about how, it's not like the old days with, the big booths and everything. And I don't know, maybe I'm just looking at it through rose-colored glasses, but I like it at least as much, if not more, because you're right. I spent very little time outside maybe the Apple booth. You might stop by if somebody had a brand new product that applied to you, but you were always looking for that little niche thing that really would make your personal life easier. And I think more of those are there. They have the opportunity to be shown, and I think they're showing up to get noticed.
Well, I think that the opportunity now is much better for them because the competition for attention is different. It's, the thing is, when you've got all the big players there, we as writers all have to take meetings with them because it's the one time a year we're going to get face-to-face with them. And the thing is, half the time they just want to get FaceTime, even though they don't have anything to tell you. They want an appointment. They want they want top of mind awareness. So I used to spend half of my Macworld in meetings with people I didn't care about, listening to pitches that I didn't care about products I'd never care about. You'd say, okay, networking products, I don't really write about that. I write a column for the very broad-based consumer. And, usually I try not to get any more technical than you plug an HDMI cable into it. So, I'm not really that interested in your 9th generation router / robot. So, I don't have to fend off so many appointment-seeking vendors. And because of that, I have more time to go out and find the guys that I don't know that don't know me. And that's really what Macworld's for. I mean, that was the best part of old Macworld. And so now, having more of that tasty goodness, more of that face-to-face time with the right people, I enjoy it even more now. So...
Yeah, I agree. And you're right. You spread your time out a little bit differently. You get to see more people, and you don't feel the obligation that if company X calls, you really have to sit down with them, especially someone in your position.
At Macworld now, I basically tell everybody I don't make appointments because I can do that now with all these guys, and I make a handful of appointments with stuff that really is on my radar, and I try not to make appointments for the rest of it, but I do keep a list of booth numbers, and I do go by and visit. but I like to do it kind of on my terms, because if you make an appointment, then you're committed to a half hour, whether you like it or not. It's very hard to break loose politely. So if you just drop in, they're generally busy enough that they'll say, oh, well, let me give you a press kit, which is exactly what I want. You know, it's like for most of that stuff, I don't need a 30-minute press briefing. So it's worked out really a lot more efficient for me. And I like that it's at the end of the week now and not in January. I mean, both of those things make it much more palatable to me. Having it right like the week or 2 weeks after New Year's, that was rough.
Yeah.
So February, you know, end of January, February is a little better.
Yeah, I think for everyone, you're right. It's you recover from the holidays a little bit better. You're sort of more prepared. It's easier for the people that are going in.
I got sick every year at Macworld when it was in the beginning of January. I'd come home sick as a dog with no voice. And the last couple of years, I've been okay because it's been a little later. And this year, I think it's the latest it's ever been. It's going into February, which is good.
Absolutely. Okay, Bob.
Now what? We're going to have... all right.
I've got one of these.
I got a white one. You think if they mate, we'll get a gray one?
I wasn't ready for that comment, Bob.
Oh, this is a PG-rated show. I'm sorry. I take it back. I didn't mean that.
So what's your reaction to the iPad mini?
So I've written a couple of columns about it already. I wrote the first column was just a straight review, and my conclusion is this. A, it's an iPad. It's just easier to hold in one hand for long periods of time. And B, the screen's pretty darn good, even though it's not a Retina display. And the first 3 days or 4 days I had it, people must have thought I was a dork because I walked around with 2 iPads, just kind of seeing which one I felt like using and looking at the same thing on both of them to see if maybe this was easier to read for me, because I'm getting to be an older guy with older eyes with bifocals. And I thought, you know, if one's more, the Retina should be a lot easier to read, but it really wasn't. It turns out that the pixel density of the iPad mini is more than sufficient for me to read at normal, you know, distance, normal reading distance. And this, I flew to Chicago last week to speak at the Chicago user group, and I purposely read this on the airplane, and I never felt like I needed a stand for it, whereas my other iPad, I take a stand on the airplane so I can put it on the tray table and leave it. This I didn't mind like holding on my hand or, you know, just holding like that. It's just so, the size is just so great. And I think then my second column was, so who would buy one? And the answer is, I think if you're an iPad person, you're going to buy an iPad, and that this size and price point might be the right iPad for you. If you're shopping for something that's the cheapest thing around, then you're not going to buy an iPad mini, because there's $199 7-inch tablets. I went and looked at them, as a matter of fact. I went to Best Buy. I actually went to Best Buy and the Microsoft Store looking at tablet devices that ran other operating systems to see what you get for $199 in a 7-inch tablet. And what I learned when I explained my situation, I would go in the store and I would say, you know, I got an iPad mini, but I got a 30-day money-back guarantee on it. I can return it. And you know, I'm just wondering at $329 or more dollars, what else I could have bought with that money. Did I make a mistake? Is there a Galaxy or a something that I would, or a Kindle Fire that I would like better? And at one particular Best Buy store, I was shocked when the assistant manager said, do you own an iPhone? Yeah. Do you have a Mac? Yeah. Well, then you'd be crazy to consider anything but the iPad. I said, really, why? Oh, well, you have apps, don't you? Yes. Well, your apps are completely Mac. You know, they're Apple-centric. They don't run on a Galaxy or a Kindle. Well, I kind of knew that. About my music. Yeah, most of that should work, but I can't sync it with iTunes. I'm going to have to learn to do something else, I think. And video, well, some of it'll probably work, and some of it would probably have to be reprocessed. And some of it that I bought from the iTunes store wouldn't work at all. I must have bought 100 iBooks. Those are kind of dead if I change to the Android platform. And so it turns out that even if I liked the $199 tablet, for me, it would have been silly to even consider because I would have been leaving so much behind. Also, I said, how do you sync this thing with your computer and your other devices like your iPhone? And, if I get this Kindle or this Galaxy thing, how do I sync all my data, my calendars, my contacts? Because on my Apple stuff, it's basically one little switch that you turn on and it just works. And so I need that. I need all of my devices to have all my appointments on, my reminders, my to-do lists. And what are we going to do about iTunes Match, by the way? I need something that'll store all 25,000 of my songs in the cloud and let me listen to them. So it just turns out that I am not in any way, shape, or form a candidate for an Android tablet. And the thing that really struck me was, if you're buying your first tablet, think through very carefully who you want to be sleeping with, because you're going to have a very difficult time a year from now or 2 years from now going to the other side if you've invested in any kind of media or you've got a routine down that's working. Like my whole, the thought of having to get calendar syncing and contact syncing and all that stuff going again, and this time with a device that doesn't speak Apple, I dreaded it. It's one of those things where I just, in the words of Lewis Black, I'd rather sharpen a pencil and stick it in my eye.
Bob, there's so many good points in there, and they seem to be so obvious, and yet everybody seems to be overlooking them. The investment you have in applications, the investment, even though we all think of not much of a learning curve with an iPad. I don't know that it's a learning curve, but there's a lot of knowledge that you've acquired about how to use it efficiently for you, that if you're going to go to one of these other devices, just goes right out the window.
I'm glad you said that, because I was looking at these other operating systems and thinking, that doesn't work the way I expected. The one that was really blew my mind, and it didn't get into print because they don't have a 7-inch device, but the Microsoft Surface it's really an interesting idea. It's a tablet, but it's soft cover, it's smart cover, has a flat keyboard in it. And it's kind of a cool idea. I mean, I kind of like that idea, but then I tried to type in either portrait or landscape. And the keyboard actually has a physical connector, and it wouldn't type in landscape. So I asked the guy, is that true? You can't turn it sideways and keep typing? He didn't think so, but he wasn't sure. I mean, it was a whole different experience at the Microsoft store. And like Microsoft Office, they had these weird integrated versions of Office where some stuff worked. Some stuff would work with finger touching, and some stuff had to be done on the keyboard. And for me, that was just completely alien. It's like I couldn't get used to, wow, you can press and hold there where a menu should be and nothing happens. Or you can, twirl or pinch or unpinch and it doesn't do what you think it's going to do. So there is a learning curve. And there's a definite lack of many of the software, many of the apps that, make me very happy as a iPhone and iPad user. And I'd hate to give those up. And finally, there's a format war going on for your iBooks, for your electronic books. There's the Barnes & Noble format, there's the Amazon format, and there's the Apple format, to name three. But they're not real easily interchangeable. You can read Amazon or Barnes & Noble books on an iPad because they both have apps, but it doesn't go the other way. You can't take your iBooks and read them on a Kindle or a Galaxy or anything like that. And to me, it doesn't really matter who I buy it from because the price is almost always the same or within a few, not enough difference to matter. If it was competitive, if all of a sudden if I bought it at the iTunes store, it cost me more every time than an Android user, I'd be thinking, what can I do? But that's not the case. The prices are so close as to be a wash. So I don't see any incentive in switching. And in fact, there's all kinds of disincentive once you get started with one device, one platform or the other. So I basically, is today Monday? Oh, so I'm talking about a column that runs tomorrow. But anyway, this won't be out till it's too late. But my column for tomorrow, which is 11:13, Tuesday the 13th. It'll be online on Wednesday, the 14th. Basically says, if you've never bought a tablet or other device before, other smartphone device, something that runs either Android or iOS, think very carefully, because you're impacting way more than this one purchase. Because once you've purchased this, you've set yourself off on a path to be in bed with one camp or the other. And the longer you're in that camp, the harder it'll be to switch. So make sure you make the right choice for you going in. And I would think if people looked at the two propositions, the only reason you would buy one of those other tablets is price, because they're definitely not as slick. The selection of both media and apps is definitely inferior. And the few things that they do as well or better, I wouldn't switch. I wouldn't give up all my other wholesome goodness, all my other Apple-y goodness, to have the couple of things like, well, I guess turn-by-turn directions is a moot point now. And that's another thing. I do want to say, I have been purposely using maps to navigate over and over again, to Houston and back, to barbecue in Lockhart, Texas and back, to Lost Pines and back, lots of places. And it has been fine with me for the last, I think, 6 or 7 trips I've taken. It's been an entirely accurate, every sign, every direction's been good. And the Washington Monument isn't in a lake anymore. So for those of you who haven't been using maps, here's the thing. Yes, it's terrible, especially if you live in a big city, that there's no more transit information, that you can't find out the bus schedules. But as somebody pointed out to me, if you live in a city that has good public transportation, chances are it has its own app that's way better than what you would have gotten out of maps anyway. So that's a good point. Here in Austin, the public transportation is kind of localized. It's like where I live, there isn't really any, and people here have cars. It's not like downtown density. So I don't really know. I mean, I don't think we have an app for public transportation, but maybe we do. I'd have no reason to look because I don't take public transportation. But when I'm in San Francisco, for example, I loved that I could look in maps and find out what BART line to get on, or what BART color went to the hotel, near the hotel I wanted to be at, or how I could get on a train and go visit a friend in Berkeley. Those are things that were convenient. But there's a BART app, and I'm sure it's better than what I was doing in maps. I just didn't know it at the time. So I think much as I miss that being integrated with maps, I've learned that when I go somewhere like to San Francisco in January, I'll get the app in advance, and I'll open it and I'll look at it and get a little bit familiar with it, so that when I need to get on a train, I'll just be able to pull out my phone and go, okay, there should be a train here in 7 minutes. Rock and roll. But maps, the point is, maps isn't as bad as I think a lot of the media has made it out to be. And I think people who actually use it, for the most part, say, well, it works fine, or it worked the same as Google Maps would have, except there's no Street View. And again, there are people who love Street View and use it. I think it's gimmicky, and I never used it for getting somewhere. I used it for seeing what someone's house looked like from the street. But mostly, I didn't find it helpful for finding places. I mean, I'm much happier looking at a top-down map and where my car is on the street than trying to figure out where on the left or right to look with their camera. By the way, you were standing in your window naked when the car went by. Go Google your house and go look through your front window.
Okay.
I think they blur that stuff out. They blur out license plates. If there's cars if you look at my house, there's a car out in front, but they blur out the license plate.
Yeah, I don't know how they always seem to find parking lots empty, which is fascinating to me.
Are those vehicles manned? I heard that they had vehicles like that didn't have any drivers that they were testing.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
I'm not sure which is worse. Cars with no drivers or the drivers we have out there today, you know? I think maybe robots would be better than a lot of drivers I've seen on the highway.
Yeah.
I don't think they could be worse than some of the drivers I've seen out there.
I would agree with that. I don't know. I don't understand the controversy. I guess we're back to that rush to the bottom discussion where everybody wants the price on everything to just go down, down, down. And they seem to be more focused on the price than on the price performance, price capability ratio. And I know I sound like an Apple guy, but this is an iPad. It's a smaller iPad, but it's an iPad. It does everything that, in the case of the one I have and probably the one you have, I don't think you have an LTE yet. If you bought...
But I'm ordering one.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about it too. But if you have a Wi-Fi iPad, this is a Wi-Fi iPad. If you order an LTE iPad, you're going to have the equivalent of an iPad 3 with Verizon or AT&T or whomever. And that just opens so many doors with all the apps, with everything you already know how to do it. You made some great points.
It fits in a pocket. I mean, all the 7 inches do, but this one's thinner and lighter. And I can take it in cargo pants or cargo shorts in those flappy pockets, or most of my jackets and even hoodies have big enough pockets for that. That's one of the problems with the full-size iPad is there's really no convenient way to lug it around with you. I mean, it really has to go in a backpack or a briefcase or something. You don't want to have your hands full and you can't just stick it in a pocket. Most purses are even too small. I've heard ladies look at this and say, that's purse size, which it's true. You know, I mean, this is the perfect size for playing Words with Friends in line at the grocery store or whatever, you know, much better for people our age than the iPhone. I would start carrying mine a lot more if it had cellular. When I get one with cellular, I will start carrying it a lot more.
Your point about the syncing back and forth, again, is another one that seems to be lost on folks. Apple has an ecosystem in place that this integrates into. Now, whether it's the best ecosystem, whether it's the one you use, that is up for discussion, at least as much as if we were talking PCs or full-size iPads. But it is there. With the others, you almost automatically have to jump through a bunch of hoops.
Well, and the integration isn't there. I mean, I just love the way iTunes has turned into kind of a bloatware, but there's a big overhaul coming this month, and we'll see what that's like. But I have become used to using it to manage the media on my devices. And with the exception of iTunes Match coming along and taking music out of the mix, I'm just used to it. I know how to get its controls to sync what I want, and it does it automatically. I can say always sync these 5 albums and the 3 most recent events. And I'll always have the pictures I'm looking for, and I don't have to remember to do anything each time. Always have fresh pictures on the device. The same thing with movies and podcasts. I mean, the whole mechanism for deciding what to sync works for me. I don't want to have more than 3 episodes of podcasts on my phone, because if I have more than 3 on the phone, there's no chance I'll listen to them again before I get back to my desk and sync again. So why waste the space? I mean, I'm always struggling with filling up my iPhone or my iPad, because even with my music in the cloud, I tend to load up on video. And I have a lot of apps. I have over 20 gigs of apps just on my iPad mini. And I haven't started going through. I mean, I've got 1,500 apps in the library. I haven't started to really stock it yet. I just put on the essentials, and it's got 20 gigabytes of apps already. That's just the bare essentials.
And think about that too. If we're going to do the monetary thing, you've already bought those apps. You know what you like and maybe what you want to experiment with. If you go to one of the other platforms, if they have apps, if they have the apps you want, you're going to have to buy them again.
Yeah. And which is never a ideal prospect. You know, the thing is, I think if people are so cost conscious that is the factor that's going to drive their decision, then they should really be thinking about whether or not they want to, you know, whether that should force them into one ecosystem or the other. Because you're not just buying a cheap tablet now. Now you're stuck buying that kind of tablet down the road because your media works with it, your syncing works with it, and more so for Apple users. But once you get started, pulling free is hard, you know? You're kind of like in quicksand. And so I think for a lot of these people, 3 years from now or 2 years from now, after they bought a cheap tablet, they're going to be saying, I wish I had bought the iPad in the first place, because now I'm going to make the switch and it's not going to be, you know, I'm going to have to give stuff up. I don't see a lot of iPad users doing it the other way. I don't see a lot of people leaving the iOS platform and saying, no, I'm going to give up, you know, all these things that I have that work and switch.
I've agreed 100%. And the other thing, too, that people forget, they think, oh, well, I'll just buy a couple apps. First of all, no, you're not just going to buy a couple apps. You're going to keep feeding this thing because they're going to be new and cool apps that you want to work with and play with that come out. The second thing is it doesn't seem like much when you're doing it at $1, $2, $5 at a time. But what did you say, 20 gigs? I'd be afraid to. I'm not even sure I want to know how many apps I have. And they're not all free.
I have 1,533 right this second because I just looked.
So, you know, how much does that represent in dollars? You know, $400?
That's at least $1,500 because the cheapest ones are $1. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of free stuff in there, but there's also a lot of stuff that I bought in-app upgrades for.
Yeah.
So I would guess if I have 1,500 apps that I've spent close to $1,500 that I would have to replace.
Yeah.
And also, I'm a good shopper. I bought a lot of that stuff on sale.
Yeah. And that's it. You know, whether you have $1,500, I don't care if it's $300. You know, it's still a number.
It's real money and a pain. Like, I've got data in some of these apps, and I'm not sure how much difficulty there would be involved in getting it out of them and getting it into something else on a different device. I know on the Mac, and I know between these devices that it's fairly easy. It depends on the app, but for the most part, you can do it either in iTunes or in a web browser. And that's good enough for me. I can do those two things. So, I don't know. I just can't see somebody that's happy with their Apple stuff switching to Android or even the Microsoft Surface. It just, I think the barriers, and you know, some might say, well, Apple's really, you know, they're sucking you in, and once they get you, they rip you off and rape you. And the truth is, well, I think everybody's out to get you to become a viable consumer of their products. And to me, it's more a matter of which devil do I want to give my money to than, oh, these guys are terrible, because the prices are about the same. I mean, you go to Amazon.com and you look at songs, they might be a dime cheaper sometimes, but most of them are the same, $1.29 or 99 cents. And they've got some 89 cents. Okay, so for a dime, I'm not running to get rid of my whole collection of music. Also, I think the quality of the rips that you get from the iTunes store is slightly better, the AAC at a higher bit rate. But you know, some people say the MP3s, they're slightly bigger files, so maybe they sound better. It's not worth switching over. I mean, if all of a sudden songs were a penny on Android, that might make a difference to me because I buy a lot of songs. But I couldn't see any reason that I would want to get a Kindle Fire. And the thing that people were saying, the big thing was, it's not real HD. The iPad mini is not real HD. And I kept shoving it in people's faces with video running and saying, does that look okay? I think that looks pretty good. What do you think? And then I had an iPad 2, which it was a ringer, because it's got the same resolution as the mini. And every once in a while, I'd pull that out and say, compare that to the mini. Well, it should be a little worse because it's the same number of pixels on a bigger display, which means that the pixel density is a little bit looser. And so in theory, that should look worse. But nobody ever said it did. Some people said it looked better, and some people said it looked the same, which is probably pretty close to the truth. But, they'd look at that and they'd go, oh no, the little one's better. So, it proves that for a lot of things, you can't even tell when they're side by side. And I looked at text very carefully because that's a big thing for me. And yes, you can see the difference. When you look real closely on a Retina display, you can see the difference in the type even at regular reading size. Does it matter to your reading enjoyment or your reading pleasure or even the legibility? No. Because even on this, it's so clear you can read it at very small point sizes. And so that was my big concern, was that reading would be not as good as on a Retina display. And while you can see the difference, it didn't affect the experience for me at all. And trading the weight and size for a little less resolution that I can't notice most of the time. I mean, I was looking at them like this, and I would get out my iPhone, which has a magnifying glass, and I'd look at them under a magnifying glass, back and forth. I spent a lot of time looking very carefully at the displays. And at the end, I decided I think there's much to be said for the Retina display. It's very cool. It's very pretty. I think if you're a digital artist and you're doing a lot of photo retouching, then for sure it's worth getting, because it'll enable you to zoom in more or to do more fine detail on your retouching. But for most people who are just using it for consumption, for watching movies, listening to music, things like that, reading a book, I don't think you'll notice that much. I really don't. And I looked at HD video on both. And I don't think either is real HD, because real HD is 1920 by 1080i. So the Kindle Fire is 1280 by 800, I think. And this is 1024 by 768. So you're not talking about a lot more pixels to start with. And then I think that's 1280, I'm pretpretty sure is 720p HD. That's not real HD.
Yeah.
And so, I wonder about when they say, oh, it'll display real HD. Whatever the iPad does to downscale real HD, it looks great. And taking stuff that I've ripped myself on iPad settings with Handbrake looks great too. I don't see now. There's a new version of HD coming called 4K, which is 4,000 by 4,000 pixels, and that is roughly twice the size in one direction and 4 times the size in the other direction of today's HD. So you're going to have a lot more pixels packed in there. And when stuff like that starts to come around, I might reconsider my position. But for today, I really didn't notice enough difference in any of the things I do to make me say I would carry the bigger iPad. I mean, I'm really excited about getting an iPad mini with cellular, because it's just it's perfect. It's great for the car. It's the right size to use as a navigation system, where the full-size iPad, I was always struggling to find some place to wedge it in the car where it wouldn't bounce around. I mean, it just, and this, there's just a little slot between the seats that this sits in perfectly. You just set it in there, and it's almost like it's built in. And I've already adopted to the Lightning adapter situation. I bought 4. Apple sent me a couple. They said, we're sending you with your iPad, we're sending you the Apple adapter kit. And so I got one of each from them. So I'm all adaptered up.
Bob, it seems like people are trying to find reasons to I guess, to not buy this or not move forward. It makes me a little crazy. We all get wrapped up in the stats.
It irritated me to have to go buy a bunch of $29 and $39 adapters, but I understand completely the argument that Apple is making that, I mean, look at the size of that connector, all right? And now, look at the size of that connector. So here's the old and the new side by side, all right? A little teeny. See that? It matters when you're making things as small as the iPhone 5 and as thin as the iPad mini. I don't think either of those devices could work with a regular dock connector. I don't hear you anymore.
I don't know how that's going to show up on camera, but look how thin that is.
Right.
There's no way.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if you could. Here, I'm going to open the smart cover so you don't mistake it for part of the iPad's bulk. But that is very slim. How's that? Can you kind of see how slim that is? How about this way?
Yep.
Unbelievable. And without feeling flimsy or cheap. You know, it's like you think at some point of thinness, no matter how good the aluminum or whatever they use outside is, it's going to feel flexy and, you know, like breakable. But this feels like an iPad that, you know, maybe went through a cycle or two in the dryer. Shrunk a little. No, I think this is going to be their best-selling iPad, and I'll tell you why. Number one, it's the least expensive iPad. And that alone, I think, is good for a certain amount of cachet. You know, it's the entry price. So I think it'll move a lot. A lot of units will move just based on that. The second thing is it's a great size and shape, and it feels good in one hand, and I think that will move a lot more. So somebody said, well, but if it cannibalizes full-size iPad sales, then that's bad. And my thought is, I don't think it'll cannibalize as much as it will give you a choice. And I think a lot of people will have both. Just maybe call me crazy, but I could see the big one on the table in the den permanently. You know, instead of being the one that you take everywhere and do everything with, that one could be right where the Apple TV is, in the den. You know, it could live there. And that way you could buy a big one with Wi-Fi only and have cellular on your one that you run around with, the littler one. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who do that. And I'm not acting like one of the 52% rich enough to care, but I'm just saying I see a lot of people would have. I know a lot of people have more than one iPad already because they have one for the office and one for the kids, or they gave the old one to the kids. People don't throw them away when they're done or sell them. There's a trickle down effect. My wife, my kids, my grandkids. There's always someone that'll take your old gear. So I think the iPad mini is going to be the most successful iPad ever a couple years down the road because of those two things. It's a great size, and you don't sacrifice any part of the experience. You know, everything about it is an iPad. It's not like a iPod Touch where a lot of the iPad stuff doesn't work. And that was a big fear going in, you know, would it really be? But I haven't found one app that doesn't work. Every app. And I can't imagine an app not working.
There's no reason it should.
I've been very happy. I've already bought one. Oh, yeah, here. I bought one for my mom. Don't tell her. I'm going to give it to her for Hanukkah. I bought her a red cover.
Ooh.
The red cover came 2 days before the iPad. How's that for a tease? I'm sitting home waiting for it. The cover shows up. It's like there's two things coming from China. One of them I could use and enjoy if it came first. The other was the cover. It was just frustrating. So I played with it. I took it out in the living room and played with it a little. It's pretty boring compared to playing with a real iPad. Smart cover. They don't have apps for smart covers.
Not so far. Not so far. Well, I'm glad to hear that you have a positive reaction to it. And I think you make a lot of points that have largely been overlooked by some of the tech media in their rush to judgment. It's real easy to say, oh yeah, buy the lowest priced. This is the most affordable, and you can do this, this, and this with it. If you take a little bit of the longer look at how you're going to grow into this thing, and that's something that happened with the iPad for everyone that I know. They may buy it to consume media, to read books, and pretty soon they're out there playing with this app or that app, and they're suddenly into digital photography with this device, or they're into music making with GarageBand on this device, not to sell or anything, just to play.
It's surprising how much fun I think people have creating media once they get a device like this. And there's so many great apps for $1, $2, $3, like Instagram. Yeah, okay, filters are old hat for me and you, but there's a lot of really nice pictures up there. It's a nice way to share pictures that probably weren't that good to start with and make them a little more interesting and have a social community built around photos. Also, I wanted to show you this. I got this. This really impressed me. This is a portfolio case for the full-size iPad that has a pouch in it for So it just slides right behind your iPad like that, and then it's leather, very nice thin leather folio that will hold your Apple keyboard. Now, the reason I mention it is I get a lot of keyboards. I mean, everybody knows I'm very picky about keyboards, so they always want to send me the latest Bluetooth keyboard or the latest iPad keyboard, and I get a lot of stuff like this. And there's nothing wrong with this, by the way. This is actually a pretty good keyboard. It's a Logitech, and it's solid aluminum. It replaces the smart cover, and it's got a little groove so you can put your iPad in, and it sits at a good angle for typing. There's a lot to be said for that. But the Apple keyboard has, of all these Bluetooth keyboards I've tried, the best response, and it feels the most like my laptop keyboard, which means I can type pretty accurately on it. So I like that, and I like that, I don't have to use this smart cover. On the other hand, this is aluminum, which is probably pretty good protection for an iPad, although the leather's pretty protective also. I just like my Apple keyboard more than any other Bluetooth keyboard I've got.
Who makes the leather one you just showed off?
I'm glad you said that, because I'm sure they'd have been very mad if I showed it on TV and didn't tell you who makes it. And who makes it is, it's under the iPad, so I have to do surgery here. Touch Type is the name of the company. Touch Type, all one word.
Okay. I'll make sure it's in the show notes.
And I haven't actually looked for the price yet, but I would say if it's under $100, it's worth it. It's nice leather. It's actually natural leather. My wife said that leather looks a little like maybe scuffed up, and I said, well, that means that cow walked into some barbed wire or something. These aren't Connolly hides like on a Bentley.
Spoken like a Texan, Bob.
This is real leather, It's got character. I like that. And it folds over to make a little stand, which is pretty convenient.
Well, we got to get together sometime before Macworld. I'm sure we will talk before then. But at the very least, we'll expect to see you there on the show floor and, of course, at Cirque du Mac with the Macworld All-Star Band.
Yes. My favorite time of year.
Agreed.
Well, is that it? What didn't we talk about? I guess we talked about everything. Mountain Lion's not new anymore.
No. Well, we'll have a new version of iTunes coming here soon.
Yeah, let's talk about that when it comes out.
That sounds good.
Give me a week to tear it to shreds and really beat on it, and then let's talk.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Folks, that's Bob.
LeVitus from Texas. Yeah. Austin, Texas. Signing off.
He's doing the outro. Folks, Mac Notables
That's my outro. Now you can do yours.
Folks, Mac Notables is the home of the Mac experts you want to hear from. That's Bob, Dr. Mac LeVitus, in his office. Until the next time, thanks for watching.
And thanks for having me.
MacVoicesTV is part of the MacVoices Group at MacVoicesGroup.com. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at BackbeatMedia.com.